Hi, I'm Jan Gerber. In this episode of our Mental Health Awareness podcast series, I'll be speaking to Ant Middleton. Ant is a decorated former Royal Marine and elite soldier from the British Armed Forces. He has been, both privately and in his professional life, very emotionally straining and difficult and challenging times and experiences. I'll be looking forward to speak to him about his experiences, how he dealt with them, how he learned from those experiences and harnessed his demons and adverse situations to spin them into something positive, and also to speak to him generally about mental health and mental health awareness. So I'm sitting here with Ant Middleton. Thank you for taking your time to share some of your stories. Why don't you briefly introduce yourself to start?
Yeah, I'm Ant Middleton. I'm a TV personality now, which sounds pretty bizarre compared to my other career, which was in the Special Boat Service in the United Kingdom Special Forces, sort of living in the shadows, and now I live in the limelight. So quite an interesting career change, shall we say, but an exciting one.
Brilliant. I mean, you have been in your old life, the one in the shadows. Mm-hmm. You've been through a lot of tough experiences, a lot of challenges, both physically and emotionally. And you talk a lot in your book and in your public appearances about resilience. A resilience you build, a resilience that people need to make it through the tough patches in life. For yourself, was there a specific turning point in your life that you can pinpoint where that resilience building started, or was it more of a process for you?
There wasn't really a turning point, I would say. It's been a progression of childhood, military, and even leaving the military. So my childhood, when my father passed away, we up and moved to France, to moving from France back to the UK, joining the military at the age of 16. I went through quite a tough patch there. You know, obviously my training and my tours of duty in Afghanistan. I've done 3 tours in Afghanistan, and then leaving the military. So there wasn't one particular turning point. It was just a progression of lots of little ones that built up to, I suppose, the biggest one, which was when I left the military and I found myself in prison.
Right, so basically the resilience you built to deal with difficult situations, particularly also emotionally difficult situations, was in a way for you also a series of chances. Is there any view, any advice you'd have for people who do not aim to go or don't have the chance to go down a military training track? Because to build resilience on a level where they can take a lot of things and most things that life would sooner or later throw at them. Because I would presume as a not a trained soldier, mm-hmm. that the training that you went through, especially as an elite soldier, was part of a lot of that resilience that you were able to gather in your life.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was maybe the military. There's a lot of things in life that challenge people, and it's about holding yourself accountable. It's about taking ownership of who you are, and ultimately taking on that challenge. And it could be the military, it could be being a parent, it could be work, it could be social life, it could be a situation that's just presented itself. I think with resilience, it's not being afraid of failure, not being afraid of fear, and ultimately challenging that. Ultimately learning from it and exposing yourself to hardship, to suffering, to adversity. That's where resilience is built up from. It doesn't have to be through a military program. It has to just through everyday life. But ultimately, it's about identifying that situation, taking ownership of it, holding yourself accountable, and tackling it face on. A lot of people shy away, or they have the easy option and they choose the easy option, and therefore you will not build resilience if you do that. The easy option is something in life that's presented to us on a plate, where if you decide to take decide to step off that path and to challenge yourself, that's where you build up resilience, because ultimately you expose who you are, you expose your emotions, and you learn to deal with them. That's what resilience is. It doesn't have to be climbing Mount Everest, being in the special boat service, being in the special forces, being in the military. It's about taking on challenges that will challenge you and test you.
So you're saying that when we grow up as children, young adults, we should make conscious decisions, point and again, to when we have a choice, to maybe not take the easy way, but set a challenge for ourselves, or create discomfort or challenging situation for ourselves, or even seek adversity at times, if it's not just thrown at us in the first place.
Absolutely. I think as adults, we have that sense of duty, that sense of responsibility for our children, for our future generation, to build this in them. You know, I remember when I was a youngster, and I was at the beach and I didn't want to get into the water. And my stepfather lifted me up and I was kicking, screaming and crying. You know, nowadays people would be like, what are you doing? You can't do that. He picked me up and he literally threw me in the sea. My brothers were already in the sea, so, you know, it wasn't anything dangerous. And I hit the water and I hated him for about 30 seconds. But then after that, you know, you couldn't get me out of the water. I wanted to stay in the water, but the decision that I made not to get into the water, ultimately, which he flipped on its head, sort of gave me a new lease of life for water. After that, I loved going to the beach. I loved being in the water. You know, you couldn't get me out of the water. And it's little prominent points like that I remember, that I think, wow, that built up my resilience to actually try something that I'm scared of, or to challenge adversity. And something small like that sticks in my head from all those years ago. But if you look at day and age now, if you look at society nowadays, if you used to say, oh, my child was crying and they didn't want me to do this, but I forced them to do it, God, you'd be put under the magnifying glass and you'd be like, why did you do that? You know, it's these small things in life that really, really, really count. And I think we have a really big responsibility as adults to step up to the mark and to still have that resilience in us, and to show our children that sometimes failure is the best option, or adversity is the best option. Go down that road, figure it out. That's what being a kid is all about. And
I mean, what forms us as kids, young adults, is a sense of achievement. Mm-hmm. So presumably once you were in the water and you managed to keep yourself afloat and actually start enjoying it, it was a sense of achievement for you. And how far do you think that's something that you experience this way now as a positive memory, which was at the time very scary? Mm-hmm. How much of that comes down to you as a person, who you were at the time, how you ticked at the time? Or do you think that's generally applicable? Or could, for instance, another kid in a different situation who had been thrown into the water possibly got so scared that they wouldn't want to see the water for another few years after that?
There's obviously the safe environment. You know, I was a good swimmer. I could always swim. It wasn't into a deep end. It was just in the water on the beach. I could stand up. I was at waist height, you know. But once I was wet, I was wet. So, you know, I'm not talking about chucking someone into a dangerous situation or something where it's really going to traumatize them, but just dipping your toe literally into the ocean, right? Yeah, just progressively doing
pushing the limits a little bit.
Yeah, pushing the limits, and that's what life's about. You know, you push those limits, you learn something. You live in this new exciting space. Again, you push it again. You live in this new exciting space. You learn something. You grow, and that's what life's about. It's just constantly just pushing these limits, little by little, because you will learn and you will grow from it. And that's what I do with my children.
There is, you touched on an interesting point, is pushing out of the comfort zone. Mm-hmm. There is an abundance of research in what makes emotionally grounded, healthy, and also professionally successful adults. And one common denominator that you often found there is exactly that, is people who learned to go to the edge of the comfort zone, go beyond that edge, which is initially very, very uncomfortable. But at some point, realizing with the rewards that you get by doing that, just by feeling good about having achieved something you weren't comfortable in even attempting, that can build a purpose and that resilience. And at some point, you learn to actually embrace those challenges, and then you choose the adversity or the more challenging situation possibly over the more comfortable one at some point, because you know you will be rewarded for that. But it's probably our inner nature as especially as kids that we need that extra push.
Yeah, I think this comes down to emotional resilience and emotional intelligence. Controlling your emotions in these situations to achieve is absolutely key. I've been in situations in the military where I've had to control my emotions to get the job done. If I broke down and started crying and started shaking, and then I'd put my guys at risk and I put myself at risk, life or death situations. But I controlled my emotions to get the job done. But the moment you can learn to control your emotions, what you're doing, you're exposing those emotions. Okay, if you let those emotions take over you, then you're not learning anything. You're not learning how to control your emotions. So emotional resilience doesn't exist, because the emotion presents itself, it takes you over. It's okay, they're your emotion. No, take control of them. Because the more you expose a certain emotion, whether it's fear, for example, the more you expose it, the more you control it, the more you're going to learn about it. First time you might be absolutely petrified, you might sit still, you might freeze. Do it again. And it might freeze and you might take a step forward. Okay, then exposure, and again, you're going to learn how to control your emotions. It's like with anything else. That exposure, I'm an extreme doer. I do. I expose, and every time I unlayer something. So that's the thought process that I have. Whether that's emotional resilience, mental resilience, controlling fear, controlling failure, they're all part of life. The big things that stop us in life, that stop us from achieving, is failure and fear. We fear, boom, okay, we won't even go there. Challenge it, because like you said, once you get past that and you feel like you've got that sense of achievement, even if it's a small sense, even if you fail, but you learn something about yourself, you're going to grow. Therefore, you re-attack, you re-expose that, and then you're going to learn something. That's what life's about, is this small progression in the right direction in life. You want to be doing that till the day you die, because that's your purpose in life. So, I'm a big advocate on it, and I believe that through adversity and hardship, you will be resilient both emotionally and mentally. And I practice that with my children.
In how far do you think that's what you're saying, and obviously that's your own experience and your reality, that this has worked very well for you? In how far do you think that's a question of degree of severity? For example, when controlling your emotions, and there is in the, call it, industry of mental health and therapy and so on, there's a concept of when you try to control your adverse emotions, and you do that for too long, you just keep them in, and they build up and they eat you up from the inside, which can then, if you don't have an outlet, if you don't have anybody to talk to about your inner darkness,
sure,
it can really build to something very, very negatively powerful. And some people in the end pay the ultimate price. The suicide rates are staggering. So my question, simply put, do you think what you were just saying, is it a degree of severity or intensity where your approach works, and if somebody just gets thrown something at them that they just can't handle, their mind breaks, they get traumatized? And we can talk about trauma and PTSD in a little bit. Is there a line? Does it depend on the person, or do you think in principle your experience could be true in any situation?
There's a difference between emotional resilience and emotional fatigue, chronic fatigue, where the emotion is too overwhelming, and you do go down this road of mental health, PTSD, whatever it may be. So there is a fine line to it, but again, they're your emotions. Only you know really how far you've been pushed, or when you need an outlet as such. For example, when I get emotionally stressed, let's say, I'll go out and I'll do an activity. I'll go out and I'll climb a mountain, something as extreme as that, or I'll go out and I'll go for a run, go for a swim. I have these outlets because I recognise where my outlets are. If you don't recognise where your outlets are, and it builds up and builds up, then that's not a good situation to be in. I'd always recommend, and I always have recommended, to talk. It is the best outlet that you can do, is talk to someone. If it's too much, talk to a loved one, talk to a friend, talk to a stranger if it makes you feel better. But there's also that line of pushing people down that avenue of talking. I say to people, people say to me, "Anne, I don't want to talk." I'm like, well, how do you know if you haven't done it? So I'd always say to people, talk. Because if you don't know, you don't know what, the effects it's going to have. Lots of people, they've started talking, and it's the best thing I've ever done. Brilliant. Well, guess what? You need to keep talking. Then I'll have some people say, "Anne, I've spoken, and yeah, it's done me, but it's not really for me. I'd rather keep it in." Like I do. I do that with my father. My father's deaf from when I was 5 years old. I speak about it very rarely. Does it do me good? Not really. I prefer to hold that in. That's they're my memories. They're a few dark places that I don't want to revisit, but I manage them. The moment someone's trying to really push me into that, push, that's when I would go the other way. I'd be right. There must be something wrong with me. Am I suffering from mental health? Have I got PTSD? Have I got, even from the military? And it's like, no, I'm dealing with this quite well. I've talked about it a couple of times, but I'm quite happy on that subject. I'm quite happy to pull that back. And that's where we've got to be really careful when it comes to mental health, because some people that talk, brilliant, absolutely. Well, guess what? You keep talking to your mum, you keep talking to your parents, you keep talking to your loved ones, great. Then some people are like, "Oh, but I'm being pushed down to see a psychiatrist. I'm being pushed down this. I don't really want to go down." And all of a sudden, they're pushed into this mental health world. Okay, well, really, they don't. They're quite happy just to get on and just to block that part out. Which for me, it's worked for me. So it does work for other people. But I've seen the hovers of both sides. I've seen, soldiers suffering from PTSD that have wanted to take their own lives, and friends of mine, and I've gone everything I've done to prevent that. But I think once someone's made that decision that they no longer want to be here, you can talk all you want, but you can't get into that person's head. You can't get into that person's mind. And all it takes is for one action, then everything is done. So there is a fine balance between it. And what I mean by that also is helping the people that need help. But then there's forcing people that don't need help. We have to be really, really careful with that, because ultimately what we're doing is we're categorizing everyone into one box. And ultimately all we need to do is probably just talk about that, do this for that, and then we can take him or her out of that category, out of that box. But ultimately, once you've fallen over that furlong and you've gone too far, then yeah, there's a group for that. So having seen both sides and having experienced both sides, I've been on that edge where I'm just like, right, if I don't take charge of myself, if I don't try and understand what's going on, then I'm going to fall, and then I'm going to hand that responsibility over to other people when ultimately, we have the answers. And it does take for other people to unlayer it and go, right, I've got it. But some people are just there and they get unlayered out, and it does a reverse effect.
Right. Well, it doesn't help that mental health is something so complex. So
Exactly.
you can't just have a 2-minute conversation or just look at somebody and be like, okay, you just need to talk to someone, but actually you need to see a psychiatrist, so actually no, you'll be fine. So it's a lot of confusion often around it, and also what doesn't help is that people who are affected, and you had friends suffering from PTSD. You're not in a position where like, actually, I need help. Please, find me someone, or actually, I find somebody who can help me professionally. There's a lot of denial, first of all, and it's hard to admit. Actually, I've reached an emotional point where I can't deal with my emotions, with my trauma, and I need help. That's a hard point to reach. Often it's friends, it's family who are like, you need to do something, but then you're again pushed into that.
Yeah, of course.
And it's often well intended, and sometimes it can do more harm. That just creates a lot of complexity. I think what's important is just that everybody understands and accepts that there are people out there who do need help, and if we feel that we encounter someone who does, that we encourage them, but in a benign way, in an understanding way, in a listening way, and not like, you need to see a psychiatrist because
Absolutely.
you're crazy.
You can do it very discreetly. You can do these things very discreetly without them thinking that they've got a problem. Because the one thing that you don't want to do with some people is to go, you've got a problem, you're not normal. Then people are like, wow. So, when people keep a very close eye out, because when people might mention something and you might want to just elaborate on that. Oh, what did you say about your mum or your pal that you buried after Africa? Yeah, it was good, wasn't it? I was there, we see him off. It was a good send off, I've done that so many times, and people have done that to me. I've buried 3-4 friends, very close friends, in the ground. And then one day I'll be out and we'll be talking, and boom, I'll bring it up. And I'm not, wanted. And then someone will do, and before I know it, I've spoken about it for an hour. And I don't even realise that, it's done me so, but I come out of it and I feel refreshed. I feel very, very good about it. And it's just, and I've only spoke about it unintentionally because it came up in conversation for an hour, but I know what my friends were doing because I do it to them. So there is that way of dealing with things as well, almost the prevention before the cure. But
well, it's part of probably a cure you're not aware of.
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
processing. Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
a processing of emotions and memories. Let me get to one point that you often mention in your book. Don't let anyone tell you who you are. My question to you there is, how does it fit in a context when you go through extreme training and real life missions as you have? You must have changed as a person. Are you still the same Ant who went to primary school? The same Ant who's lost his dad, who was bullied at school?
No, and as a child you're going to learn, you're going to grow, but what shocks me as adults, when the brain is fully developed, when you're fully developed, and we'll always learn and we'll always grow. That's the purpose in life. But we now have a responsibility to look down on our generation and go, right, this now I've been mentored and brought up. Now it's my responsibility. Adults are looking to adults to still be brought up, and you're like, get a grip of yourself, take charge of yourself. You should be looking down at your children or our future generation and leading by example. I'm very sort of, I wouldn't say old school like this, but I'm very sort of set in my ways of, we're adults, we know our right from our wrong. We make, there's the difference between making bad life decisions and then needing extreme help, shall we say. So when you get to that level of responsibility, I believe as adults that we should uphold that. And yeah, people go through trauma, people go through, but guess what? Everyone has a story. Everyone has been through some kind of trauma. That is life. You know, it's about understanding and grasping that actually that is life. That's what's made me the person I am today. I'll be different in 10 years' time. I'm not saying I won't change, but ultimately I won't let people tell me who I am. How the hell are you going to know or try and tell me who I am or what I feel? Or you're not inside my body. You don't, you know a bit of me, but ultimately only I know me. Now it's almost that flip reverse thing of, why wouldn't you want to know about yourself? I find it fascinating to keep learning about myself. You know, I'm revealing these new emotions, you know, or unlayering just another part of the emotion, you know, just thinking differently or seeing things differently as I get older. You know, I find that fascinating. And also it's, no one can tell me that apart from me. So I would never let anyone define me. I let people forge me. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I see people, I like the way they've dealt with that. I'm going to put that. I love their attitude on that. But I'm always building on the best version of myself, because ultimately my core is myself, and you know yourself better than anyone else. The real answers, the true answers lie within. And guess what? Only we as individuals know them. And I'm a strong believer in that.
Yes, you have a very reflected way of how you see yourself, how you developed yourself, how you deal with situations. Also in your book, often you describe a situation and then you reflect on it. You know, what brought you to that decision? What was the sometimes intuitive thinking process? So yes, it absolutely makes the appearance that you are somebody who is well reflected on yourself and who you are and how you take. I think there's also a lot of people out there who are very confused with themselves and who they are, and can't really put emotions into place or make sense of their emotional reactions or their decisions. Often people make rash decisions also out of impulsiveness, out of anger, frustration.
That's all about growing and learning. That's life. You know, I've got no I've got sympathy towards situations and people and their upbringing and what they've been through. You know, it's life. It's life. You know, what do you want to help every single person in this world? You know, it's the moment you can take charge of yourself and take ownership of who you are, then, you know, I find that so empowering, because I can hand that over to other people. I can hand that over to future generations, not just my children, but other children, you know, even adults and people older than me. You know, I find that very empowering, and I find it very saddening, to be fair, that people go through their life confused, never sort of really figuring it out, and then dying. It's like it's a waste of life.
I think maybe it would be to their benefit if they had somebody at some point in their life who pushed them to the comfort zone, for them to actually realize they have more potential than they admit to themselves.
Yeah, I think that is great. You know, mentors are great, and, you know, having the right people around you is absolutely key. Also, I found that out later on in my life. But I spent most of my childhood, most of my military career, you know, speak to my colleagues, by myself. You know, I figured it out by myself, and I sit here as a 38-year-old man, not figured it all out, nowhere near it, and I wouldn't want to either. But, you know, having a good foundations of who I am, having a foundation of, like, you know, a foundation that I can build on. And I think that's what lacks with a lot of people. They haven't even got a foundation they can build on. They need those building blocks to be able to start that off. A lot of people never find that in their life. And once you have that foundation, you can build those building blocks on it.
I mean, that foundation in a way is an initial resilience, an initial stability that they can then develop on base of that.
Yeah, I've been in so many situations in my life. The reason why I can speak so passionately and so openly about it is because I've been at the top of my career. I've been in prison where I've had nothing, where everything, you know, I was at the lowest of the low. I've buried friends. I've been in life and death situations. I've been in situations where if I didn't take charge of who I was and didn't take charge of my mind, then I'd be in a very, very different situation to what I'm in now. So, you know, the power of positivity, the power of knowing who you are, ultimately sets those foundations. And it's just about, you know, getting out there and realizing what you're capable of. Sitting around moping about it and thinking about it is not gonna expose what needs to be exposed that you can pick from and build on. So yeah, I'm quite a stickler for it, to be fair.
Brilliant. We briefly talked about you know, one forming period of our lives, which is our childhood. Then there is a period in our lives that can be equally challenging, is when we retire. And there are statistics that when people reach, you know, the official retirement age, mortality peaks. Why is that? There's a lot of you know, guessing why that would be, and it does make sense that, you know, people, they lose structure, they lose a sense of purpose, sense of identity also. I'd like to talk to you about this a little bit, because you retired from active duty, which was a big transition, I presume. When professional athletes, when they retire at, you know, probably a similar age from the top of their career, they also have to go through a phase of where they lose that structure. You're not, you know, doing the training camps. You don't have to eat exactly according to your schedule. You're not constantly tested for this and that. And also you're not out in the field anymore. So as doing what you love to do, doing what you're trained, what's been ingrained in you to do every day. So often people are faced with a lot of time, struggling with their own identity, and often purpose. Is that something you can relate to when your active duty career came to an end?
Yeah, absolutely. When I left the military, I thought that I could just jump into any old role. I thought I was, you know, stable enough to do that. But then the whole sense of belonging, the whole identity issue comes in. And I didn't think it would have such a major role in the transition from being a military man to trying to fit into society. But that was really, really tough for me. And I didn't really want to accept it. I didn't really want to acknowledge it. But when I look back on it now and reflect on it, you know, that was a tough transition. I made so many mistakes, you know. The main mistake that I made was, you know, this whole once a Marine, always a Marine, you know, and it's like, and you're not in the Marines anymore. You know, but then, well, if I'm not a Marine, who am I? You know, well, you're just like everyone else. You've got to start somewhere, and, you know, you've got to build your way up. Well, ultimately, when you step out of a position of not only authority, but of eliteness at that level, and you jump into the unknown, you think you're going to start off on this level. It's wrong. You need to start, don't get me wrong, you're not going to start on the bottom of the ladder. You'll probably start 2 or 3 runs up, but you're not going to start on run 10. You know, it's a whole new sort of reality check. And that was very hard to accept. You know, you go out, you think, right, you know, I've earned this, right, but you need to keep earning it your whole life. You need to keep earning that run on that ladder. You need to, you know, start somewhere. And I always say to people, no matter what career or lifestyle change you transition into, you have to start at the back of the queue. Okay? But what a lot of people do, they start at the back of the queue, and after 6 months to a year, they think they can jump out and take the shortcut because they've had such a good career before, and they take a shortcut, they get lost in and around the bazaars, and before you know it, 2-3 years later, they find their way back to the queue and they have to jump at the back of the queue again.
And it's very, I think it's a human trait. We want to progress.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is.
That's why economies also always have to grow. Our generation has to have it better than the last generation. Otherwise, if you had the same quality of life, same incomes as our parents' generation, we'd be unhappy. and also this traditional career trajectory. People want to get promoted, they want to earn more, have more status, and making a step back is immensely hard. Also financially, often people who used to live with a certain income level or a certain lifestyle, for whatever reason they lose that or lose part of that. They have to take a step back. That's emotionally immensely hard.
But what you must remember is we're not entitled to anything in life. You have to earn your money, you have to earn your position, you have to earn your status. You're not entitled to anything. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong. They have this sense of entitlement, okay? And whether that's from being part of a hierarchy, financially, up there, on an annual basis, and then that whole change is like, well, look, I was getting it there, I'm entitled to it now, surely. Or I was at that position of authority, I should automatically drag that over and bring that with me. No, you've got to sort of lose that and drop that attitude. And this whole Zuckerberg effect, I call it the Zuckerberg effect, where people think they can be millionaires overnight. No, they think that career now is, they do an app, or 6 months to a year. If they haven't made £1 million, well, guess what? I'm going to change career. And they jump over, and they do that their whole lives. But if they'd have stayed in that career, a career is 15, 20, 30 years long. At the end of that career, if you work hard and you work your way up, you will live comfortably. You will hopefully, enjoy your later days in life. But this whole sense of entitlement of, I don't need to work, I can be, a millionaire within, or a very successful careers person, whatever career you choose in a year or two. It's not reality. It's not real. And that's where I talk about this sense of responsibility that we have as adults. Just to that ownership and that hold yourself accountable, show that people that this isn't real. This day and age, and I move along with the times. I get it. I do get it. But also, I do drag this, this 30, 40% of this old school resilience, this old school reality of actually work ethic, respect, manners, being able to socialize with people, keeping it real, acknowledging the situation or the person for what it is. No sugarcoating it. No, I'm going to jump into this career. Well, in 2 years' time, he got up to like 100 grand a year. So, no, don't look at life like that. And that's why I talk about, this resilience. It's a mental state. It's just stripping it all down to very, very basics, keeping it very, very simple, but keeping it real. And I think that in this society now, it's just gone too far, where everyone's entitled to something. People say, I can't find a job. I talk to 16, 17-year-olds, and I can't find a job, there's no job out there. I go, you reckon there's no? I reckon that within the next 3 hours, I could walk around this town centre and I could find a job. Well, doing what? Collecting glasses at a bar, a barman. Well, I don't want to do that, But what do you want to? You've got what? You've got GCSEs. What do you want to do? Well, I want to do this. Well, to get to that level, you're gonna have to. You've got 15, 20 years, boy. So do you understand what I mean? So there's this whole sort of reality bubble where people are like, well, you can do what you want. You can be who you want to be. You can, yes, to a certain extent, but get a grip. That is not real. Guess what? You can't be who you want to be because you haven't worked for it. And you can't do this because you have to go through this process, and this. Just because you're this, and this doesn't mean you're going to jump up there, because it's not real. It doesn't work like that. You need to earn. You're not entitled to stuff. And I think there's that whole push and pull now where we're too far over here, where we just need to stay here and move along with the times. But we just need to bring this realism back into not only ourselves but into our future generation.
What I hear out of your story is two things. A few points that you mentioned, I think you can boil down to purpose. You need to identify and know your purpose. And at the same time, you need to be pragmatic and realistic, and you need to bring that together. in
It's
such
a hybrid.
way.
It is a hybrid.
And I mean, some people, they do achieve amazing things in life, and they only do so because they've not listened to anybody else. They just be like, I'm going to do this. So I'm going to build this app or whatever you do. Yeah. And don't tell me that I need to stay on the
No, but I've done that. I've done that as well. You know, when I got out, people like, Ant, you're never going to be in the special forces. You're never, you know, the more people tell me that, the more I want to do it. But I've still had to, you know, it still took me 8-9 years to even get on special forces selection. It's like with the media world that I'm in now, you know, sort of burst into the media world, you know, sort of 3.5 years ago with one series of SAS Who Dares Wins, and they're like, and you know, don't take that as a career, you know, go back into security because it's, you know, once that show's done, it's, you know, you'll be a one-stop shop, and you know, and that, one thing that I absolutely hate is when people say to me, oh, and make the most of it whilst it's there, you know, yeah, go on, yeah, you know, strike while the iron's hot, and I'm like, I'm not striking anything, I'm not taking anything whilst it's there, because my 15-year career in the military, I very much see this new media career as 15-20 years. I'm not striking anything whilst it's hot. I'm not taking anything whilst it's there. I'm progressively going to work my way up and through and to be the best in this world now. So, you know, you still have to go through that process. If someone says, yeah, I don't care what you say, I love that attitude. I don't care what anyone else says. Do you believe that? Yes, I believe that. Well, guess what? You go and do that. Because if you believe it, I guarantee you you'll probably get knocked down again and again and again. But your belief, you'll just learn something from it each time. Learn something from it each time. Learn. Then boom, you'll hit it.
I mean, you must have had that belief when you went through your training.
I still have that belief now. Yeah. I still have that belief now. People, you know, people are starting to believe in me because and all of a sudden it's like, listen, you didn't believe in me 3 years ago. So don't, you know, it's like, and again, it's what I say about people, you know, holding themselves accountable. Knowing yourself better than anyone else is so liberating, because whether it might be a vast dream that's way out there, but as long as you believe in it, you know, you keep going for that. Even if you don't reach that dream, I guarantee you'll learn something, and then another avenue might open up. You'll go, well, that's no longer my dream there. Actually, this is much more, you know, a realistic one for the moment. And you'll go off there, and you might stay there for 5-6 years, and you might eventually reach your dream. But you know, believing in what you do, there's so many vast opportunities, and there's so many different corridors and doors that you need to open. And as long as you believe, you will achieve. And I know it sounds cliche, believe to achieve, but there's never a truer sort of expression that comes to the forefront when I think of believing and achieving, because that's exactly what I do.
Probably 20 years ago when you started your military career, you wouldn't have thought where you are 20 years later.
Even 13 years later, you know, when I first joined the military, and people, you know, you'd see, you know, hear about the SAS and the SBS and the Special Forces, and you'd be like a rabbit in the head. You know, you never even dreamed about getting on selection, let alone being in the organisation. You know, it's just like, this is never, no, don't even go there. Then things go, oh, actually, I'm quite good at this. Oh, well, actually, this person tried, and well, you know, I think I can do that. I think, again, it's just building up that self-belief in yourself, but everything starts with you.
Do you remember what your initial dream was when you started with your military career? As you know, said, you don't go in with the aim that you will go to pre-selection and an actual professional career.
I was just plodding through life, you know. I still plod through life now. I don't set myself goals because, you know, something might come up. I'm an opportunist. An opportunity might come up, and that goal is I'm off this direction there. So I don't do that. I very much live in the now. So I plod along now. You know, I plod along. Then I realise what I'm capable of. I realise what I've learned. I realise where I am, and I take a step back, have a good look around, and go, right, do you know what? I'm going to tackle that. So I'm very much in the now person. I don't think about, you know, I don't think about next week, for example. You know, I know I'll have stuff structured for next week and planned, but I'm very much a now person. I put everything into the now, because you don't know what you're going to get out of it. You know, out of this interview, and you know, I might have another opportunity. You know, it's so bizarre how the world works, and if you don't live in the now and you're always thinking about the future, or you live in the past, then again, you don't live in the real world.
There's a concept called mindfulness and being in the moment. And in mental health, and particularly mental health treatment, so people who do seek professional help, be it because they suffer from addiction or depression and so on, being in the moment is actually a very important message for somebody like that, and learning the tools to do so. Can be meditation, or anything, if you can't naturally hold that state for long, because the future often holds a lot of uncertainties, anxieties. The past holds a lot of resentment and trauma, and being in the moment can be a very, very powerful tool for, again, resilience and eventually happiness. So that's something you seem to have inadvertently mastered over time.
Yeah,
because you have to be in the moment a lot.
Yeah,
in your career,
do you know what?
right?
I think so. It's not something that's been taught. I think it's just again, and I suppose it might come back from my military days, where, every time I went on to a mission, I never knew if I was going to come back or not. So it was, I had to live in that moment. I had to be like, right, am I going to live or am I going to die? There's not really much more I can conjure up here. It's like living it, put 100% of everything into this situation, because if you have 1% distraction, it could cost you your life. So I suppose that's where it's come from.
Right. So that's one positive takeaway from a military career.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Let's briefly talk about your childhood again. From your book and some of the stories you've told publicly, it wasn't an easy childhood. Your father passed away when you were 5 years old, and after that, unexpectedly, your mother very quickly found another partner. You moved to a different country. That's just looking at it from the outside. Without knowing the different people in that story and the inner you, that looks like a recipe for a troubled childhood, teenagehood, and adulthood. You could have easily become one of those statistics of a violent, drunk, struggling with finding a job. How did you beat these odds? Was there a defining moment for you?
I suppose when I look back on my childhood and when I reflect back on what happened, I actually, take a positive from it. A lot of people say, "Ant, I believe that there's a positive to take from every negative." And the positive was that at the age of 5, when my father passed away and a new man came into our lives within a couple of weeks, and then within a couple of months we completely moved to a different country. I remember just the magnitude of the situation. I was like, what the hell is going on? To the point where it was so vast and so big that I couldn't comprehend it. So what I decided to do is not understand, or try and understand what I couldn't, especially at 5 years old. And I can remember just thinking, right, and I almost let it all go. I can remember just thinking, right, just don't think about it, just let it all go. And I can remember it almost feeling like a release, the world being taken off my shoulders. And I thought to myself, understand what you can understand. I didn't realise this back then. It's only because I could reflect on it now. And the thing that I could understand was myself. I could understand what I was doing. I could understand my emotions. I could understand what I needed to do to get on. I could understand. So from a young age of 5 and 6, I started self-reflecting at that age. So a lot of people say, "Ant, how come you're so in tune with yourself? How come you're so in touch with yourself? How come you're so connected with yourself?" I'm like, because I started reflecting, self-reflecting.
So that was your way to cope with the situation
at the age of 5 and 6. And when I look back at it, I always used to think I was quite a selfish child. I always used to think, right, just do what you want to do, think how you want to think. Quite a stubborn child like that. I always wanted to be self-sufficient, stand on my own 2 feet. But that's only because I could understand that. I could understand what is understandable, rather than trying to comprehend what either wasn't real, which was the past. It doesn't exist. It's gone. You can't possibly take anything from the past. You can't reverse time. You can't go back there. And again, I suppose living in that moment, it was So those two things, when I look back on it, I say to myself, wow, you know, when I say to people to self-reflect now at the age of 17, 18, which I try and tell them, that think about yourself. Don't think about other people. Don't think about other situations. Don't let it define yourself. How are you feeling? What emotions? They're your emotions. What are you feeling? Take control of them, you know. And I even say it to middle-aged people, even to older people. You know, I've had older people come up to me and go, Ant, you've shown me that it's not too late to self-reflect and to change your mindset. And these are people that are in their 60s and 70s. And I'm just like, when I think about it, I think, wow, do you know, I've had such an advantage in life, or such a step ahead. You know, I've had such a, you know, from the age of 5 and 6, I've had, you know, that's why I am who I am today, and that's why I think and why I reflect and why I'm connected with myself, because ultimately I've been doing it for all these years.
So that actually adverse time, those experiences in your childhood, led to the need for you to reflect, and that was your coping mechanism. And luckily it was a positive coping mechanism that could then help you build resilience and see you through life, rather than just acting out in different ways.
Yeah, but when I did act out in different ways as well, I would always think to myself, why am I acting out in this way? And why would I come back from a nightclub full of blood? Why was I fighting? Right, well, because I'm angry. Why are you angry? Because what's the trigger? That's the trigger. Right, what can I do about it? Right, talk about it? Absolutely. Try and dig and find out about it? No, because that happened 30 odd years ago, or whatever it was, 20 odd years ago, you know, at that stage. No, you can't cut that out. You know, right, what can you talk about it? Right, what can you find out about it? Does it make you feel better? Yes, it does. Right, well, actually, maybe I need to drop into conversation every now and then, or maybe I need to, you know, visit my dad's grave a little bit more, or maybe, you know, it's these little things, but they're ultimately, I'm a strong believer in, and I'm a strong believer in that you know, finding that trigger, you know, finding that moment, you know, and then my moments all blur into one. You know, I can remember, you know, if I was deaf, I can remember taking sort of ownership of myself as a youngster, reflecting on I can remember, you know, not letting people define me in the military. You know, there's all these stepping stones, but there's no set moment really that I can go back to, but just reflecting, going, that's that trigger, because it could be different emotional breakdowns for different moments, different triggers. So everything just isn't set on my father passing away. You know, that emotion was, right, I get that, right, I've dealt with that. Okay, this is a different, right, you know, so that's what you got to remember as well. And like I say to you, you know, only we know that, really, if we unlayer it and dig down into it so much. But if you do that along the way in your life, if you naturally do that along the way, rather than letting it build up, then having to go like a Jenga set and go, right, where do we start here? You know, as long as you go, right, what's doing, right, that's that one done, boom, boom, right, feeling, you know, and that's why I talk about, you know, ownership and, you know, accountability, and going, do you know what, yeah, and like you said, it's hard going, there's something here, you know, there's a problem here, or there's a weakness here, like us men do, or, you know, but it's ultimately, you know, it's acknowledging it when there's a niggle, and there might be a little, and like, right, I need to deal with that.
I mean, you quite rightly put it, the term trigger, because there's always something underlying, whilst we do have certain emotions. And now talking about, again, adverse emotions, there's also a trigger why people, you know, take the bottle down off the shelf, or why they lash out at someone, and that trigger is somewhere rooted in our past, in a past trauma or experience. So it's either about identifying it and saying, okay, I make peace with it, and I know how to deal with it, or when it sits much more deeper, okay, well, now we need to dig it out and process it so that it doesn't haunt you anymore. In your book, you also describe that you had a bully in your school, who had this focus set on you. And you described the moment where your stepfather told you don't come home before you haven't dealt with him, or actually literally told you before you haven't punched him. How was that experience?
Petrifying.
For you?
Petrifying. I couldn't concentrate on anything else that day at school. I was scared. I was lonely. But I needed to do it because otherwise I wouldn't dare walk through the door. And it's something that was really, really forced upon me, to the extent where, you know, if I had the easy option, then I would have taken it all day long. But it's something that sticks with me as well. I just think to myself, you know, do I take a positive from it? Yes, because I never got bullied again after that. So people will say, well, violence isn't the option. Well, it was there. Did it work? Yes, it did. You know, people don't like to hear that. You know, I'm not saying that that is the only way to go, but it solved that problem.
Did it help you build confidence at that time?
No, it didn't help me build confidence. It didn't change me in any way apart from that I didn't get bullied. But I didn't like the experience. I'm not a violent person. I'm not, you know, I was always a quiet boy, you know. Again, you know, I'd be playing off in the woods by myself. I'd always loved my own company. I wasn't a loner, but I'd always take myself out, you know. So you can imagine to be in that situation in the canteen where that was just my worst nightmare. But it happened, and yeah, it's, you know, with my son nowadays, I tell him to, you know, I always tell him to walk away. I'd be like, son, you know, if you're ever getting bullied, or I say, be the bigger person and walk away. And, you know, because people will take advantage of you in life, whether you like it or not. People live in this little bubble where they go, well, tell the teacher, what world do you live in? You know, but there is this maturity about our youngsters that we should, you know, do walk away. You know, if you'd have told me that 10 years ago, if you'd have said, it takes a bigger man to walk away, I'd be like, but you're absolutely, but because of the experiences that I've been through, and because I'm learning, I'm growing.
There's this saying, a battle avoided is a battle won, or a fight avoided is a fight won.
What about when a sword keeps poking you in the back?
Yeah, no, exactly, but then it's not avoided.
Exactly.
But being the bigger person and just walking away, diffuse the situation. It's also what you were trying to do before you landed the prison sentence, right?
It was. It was indeed.
But with that advice, and I recall that very vividly as well from my martial arts teacher when I was a teenager. Every time we were learning self-defense, you know, somebody would attack us with a knife. Before we would start in doing the exercises, he asked, the instructor asked everyone, what do you do when somebody pulls a knife on you? And we all together had to answer, run.
Mm-hmm.
That's really ingrained. Just, you know, walk away, run away. Don't put yourself into such a situation.
I would do that. If someone pulled a knife on me, I'd be gone.
Yeah.
If they chase me with it, it's a different story. But of course.
Right. And then it's easy to translate that into less threatening situation. To say, oh, you know, I'm going to avoid that uncomfortable situation. But then, so from your story, a takeaway is really you need to just make sensible judgments every time. Can I benefit from embracing this challenge? Or do I need to walk away from this because this doesn't make sense, this is too dangerous?
And it's also not putting yourself in those situations. It's reading the situation beforehand. You know, I'm all about prevention before cure. You know, if I walk into, let's say, a bar or a pub, for example, and I look in the corner and there's just rowdy people, had too much to drink, I'm walking straight back out there. I wouldn't have done that years ago. And again, you know, you won't find me in taxi queues late at night. You won't find me, you know, putting myself in these situations. So I'm almost, you know, eliminating the problem before it even presents itself. And that's what I think, you know, a lot of people need to do as well. Is, you know, and we have this gut feeling, we have this, you know, these spider senses that go.
And it's not hiding or running away.
No, it's not hiding. It's being smart.
Yeah.
It's going, well, do I need to put myself in this situation? No. therefore don't do it.
Right, nothing good can come of it.
Exactly, yeah.
In your book, you often talk about your demons and how if you make friends with your demons, you can leverage them to your advantage. But you never quite go into detail what those demons are. Would you share a bit?
Yeah, of course. Your demons, when you look at it, for me, punching that bully from a young age, that was me exercising my demons, knowing that it's there. Growing up, being confused about my father, drinking, violence, knowing that you can be violent, knowing that that demon is there, and if it gets hold of you, then you can spiral out of control. And that's very much in the military, pressing that trigger. You know that you can do it. You know that ultimately that is the demon exercising himself right within you. You do what needs to be done, but you never let that control you. And ultimately, when I think about it, from a young age, when I punched that bully, I didn't want to continue punching him, but I exercised the demon, but I kept him, close. I didn't let him run riot. But when I look at the violent situations that I've been in, when sort of my mid-career, my demons got the better of me. Drinking and fighting, and I went through a couple of years of doing that. That's what I talk about. Getting a grip of them, and ultimately, going back to being in Afghanistan and pulling that trigger, I had to exercise my demons, but not be that bully with a weapon. It could have been quite easy for me, and I understand how people, we're like animals. When you press that trigger for the first time, we're like a dog with a bloodlust. It's very hard to control that, not to go, just go right, kill, and do what needs to be done. And you have to control that. You have to harness it to get the job done. And your demons can be something as little as temptation, something as little as maybe doing a physical activity and you having to exercise the aggressor within you to get over that last hurdle, to get over that last hill, to get over that last obstacle, whatever it may be. And it's just about not letting that control you, but ultimately acknowledging that it's there. I'm sure sometimes everyone, you want to kick the wall, or you want to, go, oh, I want to, but you control that. You make it work for you. And when it's time to let it out, it can actually work in your advantage. It's like for me, doing the job that I've done in the military, saving life, but also taking life, is, I had to exercise that demon every time I pressed that trigger. It's like a case of, I don't want to do this, but if I don't, I'm going to die, or my pal's going to die. So therefore I need to exercise that. However, if I do that, then I start going, right, well, you're going to get it, then you can find yourself in a very, very sort of vulnerable situation. And especially when it's fueled with alcohol and drugs. It's what I say to people, we all have demons there, but once it's clouded with alcohol and drugs, those demons are going to take charge. First of all, cut out the alcohol. Don't use that as an excuse. Take away that excuse. Cut out the drugs. Don't use that as an excuse. Don't give that demon that fuel to take over who you are. And then when people do, get so far into drugs, and I'm just like, that's it's your own doing. It's like, you need to, this is where I talk about, taking charge of yourself. If that's not doing you any good. I went through 2 years of it, so I know, I've learnt the hard way. So once I cut that out of my life, I was like, actually, wow, I'm a different person now. So exercising your demons is just acknowledging that we all have them. We all have demons, and they will come out, and you will know when they come out. And it's just about going, do I need it here? No, I don't even need to. It doesn't even need to pop his head up. But you might find yourself in a situation where you're friends with your demons. You go, actually, I need this little bit of aggression, or I need this little bit of push, or I need to be someone else to get this job done. So it's
about learning to harness them at the right time.
Harness them at the right time, but also allowing them to exercise as well. You can't lock them away. Because the moment you lock them away, again, it's like being built up, build up. They want to get out, then all of a sudden, boom, you do something, and you're just like, whoa. before you know it's too late. That moment of madness can change your life.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what was the hardest moment for you emotionally in your life thus far?
The hardest time for me was being in prison, actually. When I left the military 6 months later, I found myself in prison. And just that emotional shame of being locked up, and it's such a shameful experience because, I was spending time away from the family. I was a burden. I wasn't putting food on the table. I wasn't keeping a roof over their head. I wasn't bringing in any income. This whole sense of responsibility that I've so proudly stand up to, and I'll make sure that everything's done before I do anything else. I was a burden to everyone, and it was such a shameful experience that, emotionally, it was hard to stoop down to those levels of being a burden and being not standing up to my responsibilities or not being able to. But it changed my life. It changed the way I act now. It's changed my mindset. So the positive from it is probably the best thing that probably happened to me at that stage, because if I would have got away with that, what would I have done next? I would have felt invincible, and I would have probably done something even worse and spent a lot more time away from home. So there's every positive from a negative.
And you also mentioned how it immensely helped you to have this structure of the military environment. Again, in prison, you were given a structure to get you back into a, let's say, controlled, life-controlled environment. In mental health, structure is something that also often comes up as an important concept or idea, and that people who do not have a structure in their life, even self-imposed, like, okay, I get up at this time no matter what, and then I exercise, and then I eat, and then I read a book. Or there's a lot of people now who, especially these days, who have the luxury of spending their day at will. Or again, we talked about retirement earlier on. That structure, how do you make it work for yourself now? You don't have to be in a certain place at a certain time. In theory, you can sleep in if you like.
Yeah, I think to start that structure off, you stop playing the victim. We live in this blame culture, this victim culture, where everyone owes us something, that we should be given this structure. It's down to us to build that structure. I can remember being in prison, almost going bankrupt, on the complete bones of my arse, on my back, and I felt liberated. So I thought, there's only one way for me to go here. Only one way for me to go. I didn't have no stress. I didn't have that. And I just acknowledged the situation for what it was. That's what I talk about, acknowledgement. Once you acknowledge, you can process and you can execute what needs to be done. I remember thinking, I can only build from here. I've got nothing around. I haven't got a penny in my pocket. I'm going to have to close the company down. We just have to rebuild from the start. But I can remember just thinking, wow, I feel actually liberated. I feel refreshed. And I built that structure from nothing. It's almost as if, I had a bit of land. Someone, well, guess what? I'm going to go and find some bricks. I'm going to, structure this the way I want to now. I restructured my life in a completely different way. So it's about, accountability. It's about ownership. And I always revert back to that because it's so important. Don't think people are going to do it for you, because they're not. If you want to structure your own life the way that you want it to be structured. You talk about having the liberty of sleeping. I don't. There's no liberties. I work for my liberties. I structure my liberties in a way where, I probably don't have to put that brick on that wall today, because I've already built this foundation around me. I can probably have a day off and put that brick on the next day.
Right.
It's having that structure in your life and building it yourself. And when you build it yourself, when you build those foundations yourself, and you build that, when it comes crumbling down, you know exactly where it's gone wrong or what you need to do to to step back up to the game or step back up to the plate and get things done. The moment people start doing it for you, then they're going to be doing it for you your whole life. You know, so it's about, you know, use the people around you. Don't get me wrong. Use the people around you. Use what you've got around you. Build your own structure. Make your own structure. Make it yours. Make it your blueprint. Make it your, because then no one can take it from you. And you can always, honestly, you can always revert back to it and build on it. Once those towers or bricks come tumbling down, boom, well, guess what? I've still got these foundations, these structures that I have built. I know exactly where I'm going. I know exactly where I need to rebuild. Let's do it.
That reminds me of what a friend told me the other day is success is only loaned and you're paying interest every day. So when you stop putting that interest payment in and effort in every day.
But it's like that. It's like, you know, what is success? I don't believe in that word success. I don't like that word success. Success is in the eye of the beholder. For me, success is understanding who you are and building on, being happy and building on the best version of yourself. There's nothing out there that is, you know, what defines success. For me, success is within, and if you're happy and you understand yourself and you know who you are, I just believe that in its own right is success, and everything will fit into place from there. Yeah.
I think that's a very powerful message, because you say correctly that success lies in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
And the society we live in, you know, has very peculiar definitions of what's success and what's not.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people growing up in this environment, they get this external pressure, what they need to achieve in order to be considered successful. But even when they get there, they're not fulfilled or happy.
Of course they're not.
So I think it's a very powerful message about knowing yourself and your own purpose and being in peace with your.
And once you do know your inner purpose, you know, my inner purpose is to build on being the best version of myself. This is something that the purpose lies within, and I will never fully fulfill that purpose or never, you know, get to that answer, because I'll be doing it hopefully until the day I die. That's what's going to give me purpose. I'll be on that journey, you know, pushing, trying to find out who I am. But ultimately the answer, I'll get closer and closer to it, but I'll never answer that question. That is my purpose in life. And I find that fascinating. I find it fascinating that I can do that, and there's nothing out there materialistic that's going to give me purpose. There's no, you know, it's just building the best version of myself so I can pass it on to my children. I can pass it on to future generations. I can pass it on to pass it on to whoever, and they can pass it on to us. If we all had that, you can imagine if me giving you a little bundle of positivity, a little bundle of joy, and we all had that, then that what a greater purpose than that, than lifting each other up and you know, and helping each other out. But sadly, that's not the real world that we live in. It's you know, a lot of things are materialistic and are external, but for me, you know, if you look within, then you can't go far wrong.
I think a lot of people who, you know, do struggle with purpose, who do struggle with structure, who prefer to stay in a comfortable bubble, they can really benefit from your experience and your message. And then there are those people who are ill, who are either emotionally damaged through an experience or they suffer from a mental illness. And I like to compare that to you know, somebody in order to run, in order to go through military training, for instance, you need to have your limbs. Yeah. If you lose a limb, you can't run anymore. And with mental health, it's a very similar. You can use that analogy. If somebody has a mental illness or is so traumatized that they're not in a position to just get stuck together, get through that, you know, use that resilience, and I think that's the people that we shouldn't forget.
Absolutely not.
And who need that empathy and that help to get them to a point where they can walk again, and then.
Definitely, and you know, there's so many of us out there that want to help, and there's so many of us that need help, and And if you are in that situation, then absolutely, it's like I said, it's just like rebuilding, from your foundations. It's just, but ultimately, again, you'll only accept help if you want help. Again, it all does start with the individual. And I think with anything like this, the main message that I can deliver from this is just be honest with yourself. Now, if you're honest with yourself, you can't go too wrong. Because you're honest with yourself, you go, do you know what? I need help. If you're honest with yourself and go, do you know what? I'm being pointed down this corridor, say that is this first footstep into this door a true footstep? No. Well, if it's not, don't take it. But if you go, but again, there's that reverse effect of, wow, I actually need to take this footstep. Let's do it. And on both sides, there's help on both sides. But be honest with yourself, and it would make things so much more transparent, and the process will be a lot easier.
What I read out of your story and your comments now is that self-reflection, be honest to yourself, is just as much about resilience than being strong and not giving up and pulling something through, because that's often the weakest point, is the one we don't even know about, because we don't admit that we have a problem that we need to address, either with external help or on their own. And especially mental health, that's tricky. Somebody who's very depressed doesn't have the energy, doesn't have the motivation, isn't honest to themselves that actually I want to get out of this. Somebody who suffers from addiction, often the very same thing. It's like, no, it's not that bad, or I can deal with this.
Acknowledgement.
Yeah, exactly. So that reflection, actually, I think that's a very powerful message. It's part of resilience.
No, of course it is, and it's having been sort of on both sides of it. I understand both sides, and it's traumatic when you do see so many people taking their lives. Just start off talking. Just whatever's on your mind, just let it out, and that one word or that one sentence might save your life.
Brilliant, Ant. I have a last question for you.
Please.
Talking about purpose, meaning in life. What's in for you in the future? What are your plans? What's your purpose now? Where do you see your journey going from here?
I'm very much enjoying my new career. I love delivering a message. I found that this career has, very much like my last career, isn't a privilege. It's very much a responsibility. I inspire a lot of people as much as people inspire me. So I've got this sense of responsibility to uphold especially for our future generation, about mindset, about resilience, about self-discovery, shall we say. So I'm very much doing stuff for people, whether it's day camps. I'm doing new day camps, mind over muscle day camps, which is physical and psychological. There's mindset coaching and mentoring within the physical exercise. So that's very interesting, and it's very popular. More touring around the UK. I've got a UK tour in September, talking about fear, failure, resilience, and talking about my military background, and about Mount Everest as well, that I recently scaled. So it's just getting that message out there. Everything that I do has a subliminal message behind it. I don't just do things for the sake of doing things, because that's just mundane. There's got to be a purpose behind it. It's got to stay true to me and authentic to me, and it's got to deliver a powerful message. And I just want to share my experience. I say to people, I'm not an intellect. I'm not a bookworm. I'm just someone that comes from the University of Life. And I just want to share my experiences. But a lot more TV, a lot more tours, and like I said, you haven't seen the last of me. So
brilliant. I mean, being in the public spotlight, and as you say, more TV, more appearances, more people know your name, know your face. Is that how is that experience for you? Is it stressful? Are you neutral about that part of it? People possibly recognizing you. Also, there's always the risk that a comment you make, can be picked up by tabloids in different contexts and all that. That's all the risk factors that come with being a celebrity. But
just acknowledging that is part and parcel of it. Again, going to that acknowledgement stage. This is part and parcel of it. People stopping me in the street themselves, that's all positive. People want to hear about my story. If I can make someone's day, month or year, then why wouldn't I stop and be polite? Things being taken out of concept, that's part and parcel of it. It's acknowledging that's part and parcel. I'm not going to change who I am or change how I think, or certainly be silenced through what I believe is right. And again, I do not go out to offend. My actions aren't malicious. I just generally believe I have a strong stance in my beliefs, and they've worked for me. And if I can help tens of thousands of people that I'm helping, then I'll continue being authentic, real to myself, and just accepting that the situation is the situation, and you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, right? So that's life.
Stay true to yourself.
Stay true to myself, exactly.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for this interesting conversation. It's a real pleasure having you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.